Hello, happy holidays, and welcome to another episode of the Rocker Dog Podcast, the show that talks to musicians about their dogs and spreads the gospel on how these creatures enrich our lives and well-being. I'm your host, Tim Dill, along with my bestest boy, Charlie, and today we bring you our dog-centric interview with Mike Knowlton, the multi-instrumentalist of the innovative post-punk project Unlettered, whose new LP 5 Mile Point came out on November 22nd. And this is his retired dog show competing, Rocker Dog.
Jack Knowlton is a 10-year-old English Cocker Spaniel. My wife and I, Kelly, have had Jack for 7 years. My wife has always loved English Cocker Spaniels, and this is the third English Cocker Spaniel that she's had. And we got Jack from a English Cocker Spaniel specialized rescue. And he had been a show dog for the first 3 years of his life and had done very well in the sort of show circuit. And his owner was looking to rehome him, and we were really excited. We weren't really we weren't looking to adopt necessarily an ex-show dog or whatever, but It just worked out that he was available. We went to see him, and it was love at first sight. And he's been such a pleasure and great addition to the family.
What was the owner's reason to rehome him?
She loved to show dogs, and she had like a cycle of dogs kind of that she would show. And generally, I think they kind of go from like 1.5 to 3 years as sort of the prime years for showing. And so she was ready to show the next batch.
Yeah.
She didn't keep dogs for companions and to be part of her family. It was more of a thing that she'd done all her life. So we were happy to be able to bring them into our house and provide a good home.
That's great. And can you trace back your wife's preference for English Cocker Spaniels?
Absolutely. My wife, Kelly, is, and she's I guess you would call it an Anglophile. She loves all things England. Hence, the English Cocker Spaniel, which is a closely related breed to the American Cocker Spaniel. And English Cocker Spaniel has a little bit more of an extended snout, so they don't look so sort of pressed in as sort of the American Cockers do. I think also she loves the breed because they are about like 30 to 35 pounds. So they're bigger than a small dog, but you still can pick them up if you need to. And I've always grown up with dogs in my family ever since I was a kid. So I've had a wide range of dogs, a lot of mutts. And so I really don't really have a preference for breed. So when she expressed this interest in this breed, I was excited to explore it with her.
And what else can you tell me about the breed? It's funny, I meant to look it up. All I know is, they're hunting dogs, aren't they?
They are hunting dogs, and they're sort of, they're part of sort of the Springer Spaniel family. Springers are a little bit bigger. I don't know the exact specifics of how they're used to hunt, but Cocker Spaniels and Springer Spaniels, that the sort of Spaniel breed generally flushes birds like pheasants out of the brush in the olden days in England. Funny enough, I have a couple of hunters in my family, and my cousin in particular had some pheasant feathers in his house, and he lives in Charlotte. He had a big backyard, and so we would take the feather right in front of Jack's nose. He would get a big whiff of it, and then we would hide Jack, and he would hide it somewhere in this big 2-acre yard. And we'd release Jack, and then he would just go sniff and scan all around the yard, his tail wagging like crazy, and then he would find it and then bring it back. It was really fun to see. He was sort of like reliving some previous days, I guess.
Past glory.
Exactly.
What are some of Jack's likes and dislikes?
Well, he's a very, I would call him a very present dog. He's not one of those dogs that like sleeps all day. He's very around whoever is there. He is definitely Kelly, my wife's dog. And so he's always within like a 5-foot radius of her. But when she goes away, he then very quickly migrates over to me. Right. But he's really intelligent, super smart. One funny thing he does, which is absolutely hilarious and sometimes a little bit annoying, is he will watch TV and literally watch the television, and he can tell when another dog comes on television. And when another dog comes on, he will bark at the television and sometimes charge it. And I've never had a dog that had such good eyesight. Like, he'll sit with us 15 feet away from the television and be watching it as we're watching whatever, CSI or Westworld, whatever. And he'll just start going crazy if there's an ad and there's a dog in it. It's hilarious.
It's funny because on a number of occasions, I feel like my dog doesn't really register screens or doesn't focus in on them. And even on occasion when a dog barks, either on, my phone looking at Instagram or the TV, there's no
Hmm.
reaction. But as
Hmm.
you just
Hmm.
saw, he sees a dog out the window or a car out the window, he
Hmm.
goes nuts.
Hmm.
But it's weird about just the screen, because I know a lot of my guests, we get into, FaceTiming with their dog, and my dog would
Hmm.
just be like,
Jack gives a bark if the door, whenever the door is not, the doorbell rings or whatever. He's pretty territorial. He loves food. We feed him at 5 a.m. because generally that's when we get up and start the day. And then he has what I like to call second breakfast at noon. And those are his two meals. It just so happens they happen earlier in the day because he's so food motivated. But it's always a big joke between Kelly and myself has Jack had second breakfast yet?
Now at 10 years old, is he showing his age?
He's just starting to. We've started to call him a senior gentleman. He's starting to show some of the grays in his muzzle and some of the hair around his mouth. He hasn't really slowed down much. English Cockers generally are a pretty energetic breed, and he still sort of has the energy of a younger dog. But we definitely notice he's starting to slow down just a little bit. But he's
Hmm.
still pretty spry for his age.
Now, I understand you were an active foster.
We don't foster anymore,
Okay.
but in the late teens, for about 3 years, 2.5, 3 years, my wife and I fostered over 40 dogs for a local rescue up in New Jersey. The rescue was called Home for Good Dogs. It was an amazing experience. It was before we had Jack, and it sort of was a bridge between like a previous English Cocker that she had and us wanting to just sort of help out a great local rescue doing good things. And then it was also really great for us because we got to experience all these different breeds of dogs that we never would have had ourselves. And we got to live with like a German Shepherd, a Doberman, lots of Labs and Pit Bull mixes, but smaller Beagles and just a whole range of dogs that we never would have been able to really experience. So we weren't just doing a really like helpful thing helping to foster these dogs. It was a great experience for us because we got to experience dogs that we never would have had if we hadn't.
Yeah, that's great. Just listing some of those dogs makes me think we've had a number of, obviously, I think we're at over 120 episodes. So we've run the gamut on dogs, and there's a group
Hmm.
of dogs that we seem to have more often than not. And I'm
Hmm.
curious to ask you about them. You mentioned pit bulls. They're much maligned and, misunderstood. What's been
Hmm.
your experience?
I mean, quite the opposite. They're some of the biggest sweethearts, and some of them have a little bit of that shovel head, and it's a little intimidating, but there's just soft sweethearts, and these are some of these animals that come to these rescues have had really rough beginnings and have almost every reason to lash out at anyone. But the minute that you show them love, it's like they're just a sponge soaking it all up. And
Yeah.
the only challenge can be, I don't necessarily think it is breed, it's just size. Like some dogs are so big and strong that you have to be physically able to sort of handle that. Like we fostered a Rottweiler, like a Rottweiler mix, but she was mostly a Rottweiler, a very big, heavy, strong dog. And she wasn't aggressive or anything, but just walking her, like she would pull a little bit like every dog does. And
Yeah.
at the end of the walk, my back would hurt a little bit because I was trying to pull the torque on my back the other way. So for me, it wasn't so much the breed that was more challenging. It was just sometimes the size. And I'm a pretty big guy. So, I think when you're thinking about dogs, it's just like making sure that you get one that's the right size for you.
Yeah. You also mentioned German Shepherds.
Hmm.
What's your impression of that breed?
Well, gosh, that was, that would have been a dog we never would have been interested in having in our house. But we fostered one that was sort of a medium to smaller sized female dog, and she was beautiful. She was a thin black German Shepherd who just was so stoic looking and just so strong and beautiful. Like when you think of a German Shepherd, she was that animal. Really beautiful animal. She stayed with us for 2 weeks, and she was very leggy, and she liked to counter surf. So we had to put all the food up on like the next level of the house just because she'd get at it. But when you foster, one of the things you do is you bring dogs to meet and greets, and that's where the rescue brings the potential adopters to meet the dog, and they're there to make sure that everything goes well and everything. So I brought this German Shepherd to a meet and greet, and the family that was looking to adopt her, the woman was like a yoga instructor, and she was kind of very into kind of mystical things. And she said, "Oh my gosh, this dog is so beautiful. She's great. She's acting fantastic. Thank you so much for taking care of her." And she shook my hand and she just said, she looked me in the eye and said, "You have great energy." And it just felt like this amazing experience because the dog had great energy. Everything was great. They were so happy to adopt her. And to be part of that process was just fantastic. It makes you feel so special.
Yeah, I bet. Were you close to keeping any of the 40 that came
Yes,
through your door?
yes, definitely. We were about to become a foster failure on one dog. It was a part of a litter. They were two sort of black lab mixes. We really liked the one that we were fostering. And so we walked the dog up to an adoption event and we put the dog in the kennel for the adoption event to start. And I told the foster coordinator, I was like, we'd like to, oh, it was Jekyll and Heckle were the names for the dogs. So they were brothers, Jekyll and Heckle. And we had adopted, or we were fostering Jekyll. And so I told the coordinator, I'm like, we'd love to adopt Jekyll. And she's like, okay, well, after this event, we'll make sure that happens. At the event, Jekyll was adopted. So then the coordinator was like, oh, you could just get Heckle. And Kelly and I knew that Heckle was different than Jekyll. They acted differently and this and that. And it just wasn't that sort of connection that we felt. So we never were able to adopt Jekyll.
Well, just mentioning connection, and you mentioned that yoga instructor with the German Shepherd, that there, you do have that connection, and the success story of that meet and greet. Do you have any experiences where you're getting a bad vibe, like this is not the right pairing?
Yeah, one situation where sort of the dog was, not every dog at a rescue is perfect. I mean, no dog's perfect, but sometimes, you don't know what their backgrounds are, and they can just they maybe are skittish, or they just have some behaviors that an owner might have to spend some time with to really kind of work with them. It's not always just bring them into the house and they automatically fit. So this dog was a little bit more of a challenging dog, and the potential adopter was an elderly lady that was looking for a companion on a large piece of property that she had. And it was just clear that it wasn't a good fit because that dog needed a different type of situation, let's say. You can just sort of tell. But I got to say, like 80% of the meet and greets were like slam dunks. They were families that have been talking about getting a dog for a long time. They see the dog at the meet and greet. It's love at first sight. And you're just like, oh my gosh, I'm part of this, making this happen. It's like nothing feels better.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
I have another question. I don't want to bring the mood down, but I was going to ask, is there any dog or breed that you had experience with that you just didn't care for it, I guess, for lack of a...
Yeah. It was probably that Rottweiler, just because she was a mom and her name was Honey. She was a sweetheart, a real sweet dog. And, Rotties can be intimidating like a pit bull too, and when I'm walking a dog, I like to kind of direct the dog while we're out on the walk. And it was just very challenging working with her because of her, It wasn't even her weight or size. It was like she was a tank. And she was just so low to the ground and so strong that it was hard working with her.
Yeah.
But like I said, she was a sweetheart.
And in your experience, what do you, it's going to be a funny question if I ask it without context, but I want to ask, what do you see the differences between male and female besides the obvious? Is there anything that comes to mind for you?
Yeah. It's funny because I have a strong preference to female dogs. And I find that they're a little bit more independent, and they're a little bit more cat-like. They might not be as needy, and I'd say maybe a bit of a generalization, but generally female dogs are more independent, and they might not be so on you all the time. And I love an animal that doesn't just give me love all the time. I like an animal that makes me work for it sometimes, and sometimes the female animals that I've had are sort of like that. They're a little standoffish sometimes. And it's nice to okay, look, I'm just going to focus on you and we're going to have a moment. And, the male dogs I've had are really loving and friendly. They come up to you very quickly. But I definitely prefer female dogs because also it's like when you're walking male dogs, it's like every 10 feet, they're stopping to leave some P-mail for someone. So that gets a little old after a little while. And then they do the whole macho thing. So,
What were the two previous English Cocker Spaniels? Boys or girls
Um,
or mix?
they were both Kelly, my wife Kelly, has a strong preference for male animals, so they were both male English Cockers. The second one was named Scout, and he was a black and white, so he basically looked like a cow. He had like black and white spots like a cow. And then her first English Cocker was named Romeo, and he was what they call a blue roan. And a blue roan is a unique aspect to spaniels. It's sort of a black and white, but it's speckled. It's not so circular blotches around it. It's more like
Mhm.
small. The coat is more speckled, so it gives off a bit of a blue hue.
Okay.
So we both love blue roans, and so her first cocker was a blue roan, and our and Jack is a blue roan as well.
Okay. And speaking of Jack, I wanted to ask, you mentioned that you are living down south from New Jersey. How did Jack take the move?
Oh, like a champ. Because the weather's nicer down here, we're much more active with him. We can take him
Okay.
on longer walks and more frequent walks. So I think he's loved the extra physical activity. And then as a member of our family, the more physical activity he has, the more naps he takes during the day. So it's sort of it's just a better balance for him. He doesn't have so much pent up energy just because he's able to get out more. It wasn't a big change for him, kind of foliage wise, or like the heat doesn't seem to bother him much. The one thing we were worried about down here in Florida, we have a lot of lizards, a lot of small
Yeah.
geckos and stuff. So, and those can be really bad for dogs. And if they catch them and eat them, you're going to the vet. So we were a little worried that and given how food motivated he is, we thought he'd be chasing those things all day long. But we're lucky he's not. He's just either he realizes he's never going to catch him, so he's like, why bother?
Yeah. Is he, does he enjoy the water?
I'd say like half and half. He's not like a lab that will just go bounding into water because they love to swim. But if he's near the water and you throw a toy into the water, he loves to play catch and retrieve. He'll go after it and swim. He definitely enjoys it, but I would say isn't, like I don't have to be worried about him running into the pond if I'm not throwing something to like egg him on, is
Right.
what I'm saying.
Okay. Well, I wind down every show with what I call the zoomies. Does Jack get the zoomies?
No, he doesn't.
It's funny, I only ask because there's certain dogs that seem like they don't have the physicality to do the zoomies.
Yeah, he
But,
doesn't really. No.
well, regardless, these are meant to just be fast, five fast, frivolous questions. The first is the
Cool.
most frivolous, but given you've got experience with 40 plus foster dogs, I'm curious, do you kiss these dogs on the mouth?
I do not. I am not I've never liked a dog licking me in the mouth area. I can handle it other places. Kelly's a lot more open-minded about that. Let's just leave it that way.
Okay. All right. And we'll use Jack for this, but does Jack have a theme song? Being a musician yourself, if Jack walks in the room, can you imagine what plays to, welcome him?
Um, well, it would definitely be like a classical, like it'd be a symphonic piece of some type, like a Vivaldi piece, perhaps. I
Okay.
don't think it would be. My first thought was maybe like the theme to Rocky, but he's not that big that it's not that, and he's not. He's a little bit more sort of stocky, and but he's got that sort of attitude, a little bit of attitude. But he's very refined in English, so he would definitely be like a classical piece of some type.
Okay. I like that. Question three, some people I talk to, their dogs go on tour with them. Some
hmm
show up to shows, but hypothetically, if Jack toured with you, what would Jack want on the tour rider?
Oh gosh, it would definitely be three chew sticks a day, but there's a special type of chew stick. It has this brown rawhide wrapped around it. So he likes to basically start off by unwrapping the brown rawhide, eating that, then taking the stick and slowly eating that. So he would require three. It's definitely one in the morning, afternoon, evening. That would be his
Okay,
rider.
perfect. Question four is, do you have a dog voice? Do you speak to all your dogs in that embarrassing high-pitched voice?
Yes, we definitely do, and I'm not going to do it now. But it absolutely we dog talk to him all the time, and he has nicknames, crazy, silly nicknames. Sir Sippington is one because Jack always loves to like whenever he sees the leash, he doesn't run to the door. He goes slowly to his water bowl. It's almost like he's charging up for the walk. It's hilarious. He takes a long drink, and we call him Sir Sippington. It's like Sir Sippington is ready for his walk.
The second part of that question, given this preference of English, this
Mhm.
Europhile, Do you give him a voice? Like, do you imagine what he would sound like speaking?
Absolutely, and it has a strong English accent.
Okay, that's
And
what
it's very refined as well.
I love it. And question 5, I might know you mentioned the rescue you worked with very closely, but I always ask if there's a dog service or an organization that you'd like to shout out.
Oh yeah, I'd love to shout out Home for Good Dogs out of Berkeley Heights, New Jersey. We fostered there for almost 2 years and had a great time, and they've done a lot of great good up there.
Great. I'll get some information in their website and put it in the show notes, so hopefully people in the area can find them.
Perfect. Yeah.
So one other question, and this is a note I got from our intermediary, and I don't know where it fits in, but somewhere she said that you named dogs Henry down the line.
Yeah.
Henry and Henrietta. So you're up to Henry the Seventh.
Yeah. So my family, our first dog was Henry.
Okay, so this is your parents. We're talking
a male
like
mutt. Yes, my parents. When I was growing up, at maybe 4 or 5, maybe even younger, my parents got a mutt that was like a collie mutt. He looked kind of collie-esque, but he just had shorter hair, and his name was Henry. And then my parents only got male dogs, and so every dog that they got that was a male after Henry, they named Henry. so they were up to like Henry the 5th or 6th, and then Kelly and I had a female dog and had to keep the streak going. So Henrietta was her name, but we called her Henry, so she was Henry the 7th or whatever. But Henry is the name of the Knowltons.
Okay. As you were going on, I was like, where does Henry fit? Because when you mentioned the other Cocker Spaniels names, like, there's no Henrys.
Yeah, no, he wasn't. She wasn't a Cocker.
And you didn't make it to 8. Do you fear the 8th with all the baggage that might carry?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, Mike, thank you for giving me your time. It was great talking to you, and thank you for what you do. It's always nice to converse with fellow dog people and people that are advocating for our canine companions.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.